Hi there, and welcome to Ancestral Recall. I'm your host, Eli Kaplan. This is a Magic web series that explores over 20 years of the history of Magic the Gathering, set by set. Early on in my show, getting close to 2 years ago, I started my set reviews with Invasion, the first card where gold matters a ton, and then followed up with Apocalypse. Now, Invasion focused on allied color pairs, and Apocalypse was the first set to examine enemy gold cards. But there was a gap I skipped over, Planeshift. The second set of Invasion block was released in 2001 and continued the themes of Invasion. And so before we get into our next block, which is Ice Age, the very first block, I'd like to correct this omission and check back in on Planeshift and Invasion block as a whole. What were the key cards in Limited and Standard? Did any cards have any big impacts on other formats? What can you use in your cube? Stay tuned to find out. Today, I just want to talk about the story, mechanics, and some of the cycles, and I'll save the rest for next time, as well as a brief review of Invasion block and its significance to the history of the game. Story. Planeshift is the second set detailing the Phyrexian invasion of Dominaria. Krovax, the Evankar of Wrath, and chief servant of Yawgmoth, father of machines, is about to unleash his main assault on the most important plane in Magic's history. For centuries, the Evankars of Wrath have been breeding ferocious monsters, shifting the plane's physical layout into a dark shadow of Dominaria. The Phyrexian plague breeders have not lain idle, creating foul diseases custom designed for infecting the Dominarians. And here is the most desperate hour for Dominaria, as the Plane of Wrath is overlaid onto Dominaria like a blanket covering a bed. A bed of nails it is. Instantly, the Wrathy and Phyrexian hordes simultaneously overrun every corner of Dominaria. Planeswalker Urza, knowing of the incoming invasion, has finally used Gerard Capuchin and the crew of the Skyship Weatherlight to assemble the Legacy, the assemblage of artifacts and weaponry that will destroy the Phyrexian menace, or at least that's what the prophecy says. The prophecy that Urza made himself. Urza has also aligned the remainder of the cultures of Dominaria, from the ranges of the Keldons to the dwellers of Yavimaya and Llanowar and the nobles of Benalia to repel the invaders. Urza even awakes his own personal army, the Metathran, his own bioengineered soldiers, to join the fray. Urza hands over control of his armies to his closest confidant, Baron, and meets up with 8 other planeswalkers he is allied with in order to lead a raid on Yawgmoth's home plane. In Planeshift, we get 3 new legends to depict some of the key story players. On the Phyrexian side is Urtai the Corrupted, a sneering egotist of a mage who loves countering opponents' spells. While in the past all he needed to do so was mana, now he relies on sacrificing the lives of others to thwart the opposition's plans. Skyship Weatherlight is represented here as another legendary artifact, which lets you search any number of creatures or artifacts out from your library and stow them away under it. At that point, you can pay another 4, tap it, and put one of those cards into your hand. It's an interesting variant on Demonic Tutor, and also resembles Invasion's Planar Portal. Finally, there's the mighty Minotaur, Tangarth. Tangarth is a classic archetype in science fiction, the proud warrior race guy. You know how Worf is in Star Trek? Yeah, that's Tangarth, though Tangarth is more bloodthirsty and cunning than Worf. Tangarth is 4/4 for 5 mana, which seems like a lot by modern standards, but back in the day, these were very respectable stats. Tangarth could also fight, and I don't mean just attacking, I mean he can tap to do combat damage to another creature. He wasn't the first fighter in Magic, that was Tracker, but Tangarth was big and efficient. I should also note that these legends also had something unique about them, something Wizards had never done before. Some foil versions of these rares came with alternate art, creating an instant collector's chase item. With that said, the experiment did not go over well, annoying collectors, and Wizards stopped that business quickly. Back when I was doing my initial review of Invasion, I didn't talk about the new creature types that much. Invasion block did introduce a major tribe, the Kavu, stone-like creatures that rose up from the earth as the fighting arm of Gaia, the spirit of Dominaria itself. While few Kavu have been printed outside the block, they were a major tribe here in red and green, costing a little more aggressively on the whole than previous tribes like beasts. Phyrexians are mostly zombies, only found in black except for legends, and represent only a few creatures in the block, about 1 in 20. This was a bad as fan. The set looked so much at the protagonists that antagonists were barely there. You were much more likely to get a Kavu than a Phyrexian. From a flavor perspective, this was a failure of the block, and later conflicts, represented in Scars of Mirrodin block or Kamigawa block, made sure to depict both sides of the conflict equally. Like its predecessor, Invasion, Planeshift focused on multicolored cards and monocolored cards that interacted with color. Allied 2-color pairs and a few 3-color spells were the dominating cards in the set. Now, my favorite common in the set, Meyer Kavu, was one of the monocolored cards, a red 4-drop that was 3-2, or a 4-3 for 4 if you had a swamp. Now, today, that's somewhat understated. I mean, you can get 4 3s for 4 mana for red just very simply by paying double red. But back then, this was a very efficient, powerful beater. Terminate, one of the most popular and powerful spot removal spells of all time, debuted here. And I'm not going to get into too many details, but if you ever draft Invasion Planeshift, Black-Red is commonly agreed to be the best 2-color archetype, thanks to the strength of the Planeshift common run. The best archetype in the block as a whole is 5-color with green fixers, but it's not always easy to get. It's not blatantly obvious that the color theme shifts a bit from Invasion, but Planeshift does have a number of 3-color cards, or cards that work best when you use 3 allied colors. I'll talk more about these next time. Mechanics. Invasion introduced 2 new mechanics, Kicker and Domain. Domain wasn't keyworded at the time, though. Domain cared about how many of each of the 5 basic land types you controlled, and in fact, Wizards almost printed a 6th basic land type, codenamed Barry's Land in design, which would be named Cave and tap for colorless mana. But when the set came almost down to the wire, Wizards decided not to pull the trigger, and there were only 5 basic land types ever. Kicker is a very general mechanic, letting you get a bigger effect when you pay more mana at the time of casting the spell. In fact, many mechanics that came later on in Magic, or even before Magic, can fairly be argued as being variants of Kicker. Entwine? That's definitely Kicker. Buyback? That's a version of Kicker. Overload? Yeah, that's Kicker. World Wake's multi-Kicker? Well, obviously, it even has Kicker in the name. Planeshift decided to add a twist to Kicker by giving it alternate costs. Phyrexian Scuda could hit play as a 3-3, or, if you kicked it with 3 life, a 5-5. And happily, players finally had an alternative to the classic Juzam Jin. There was a common cycle of spells that forced players to sacrifice lands. Rushing River was a boomerang that could bounce 2 permanents if you sacrifice a land. This was a huge hit, and is still popular in cubes today. Magma Burst was a 4-mana lightning bolt that could also copy itself and hit a second target at the cost of losing 2 lands. Bogdown can turn Mind Rot into a 3-for-1 if you pitch 2 lands in. But these are mere twists, not true innovation. The new mechanic of Planeshift was gating, an ability on multicolored creatures. These creatures have big stats and came with an additional cost, requiring a player to return a creature of one of the 2 colors of the gator back to hand. So, if you had Cavern Harpy, a 2-1 flyer for 2 mana, you could start off by playing Fairy Squadron as a 1-1 on turn 1, attack with it on turn 2, then pay UB and play the Harpy, returning the Fairy back to hand where it could be played as a 3-3 flyer for 5. The biggest gator was Shivan Worm, a trampling 7-7 for 5 mana. In an era dominated by spells with less powerful creatures, Shivan Worm was a standout. It had particular synergy with Blastoderm, one of Mercadian Masks' most powerful green creatures. And it also worked really well with another Planeshift standout, Flametongue Kavu. Flametongue Kavu just kills things, so yeah, reusing it, that's a beatin'. But Worm had gating. Sadly, gating failed to make major waves in Standard. Planeshift has more than a few relevant cycles I want to discuss. The first one is the Familiars, 2-drops that reduce the mana costs of spells in its color's allies. The inspiration here is Tempest's Medallion cycle. For more information on Tempest, click here. Okay, plug for one of my oldest videos aside, Thornscape Familiar could swing for 2 and made Urza's Rage only cost 2. Thornscape Familiar was a solid aggressive card. Sunscape Familiar was decent on defense and was a handy tool for control. Nightscape Familiar's regeneration made it the most popular in Draft, as well as the fact that black, red, and blue were the most popular and strongest colors in the Draft format. Stormscape Familiar, well, I don't like to play 1-power flyers for 2 mana unlimited, but this one was good enough to make the cut. And Thunderscape Familiar is, well, someone's got to be the weakest of the lot. A mere 1-1 for Striker for 2 mana, but it was still quite playable and limited. Note that the cost reduction applies to Flashback, Miracle, and any other alternate casting cost. The next cycle that's technically monocolored, but really isn't, is the Battlemage cycle. These harken back to Mirage's Guildmage cycle, 1-drops that had 2 activated abilities paid for with allied colors. The Apprentices in Invasion have similar, fairer activated abilities. And Invasion even had the rare Masters, which required 4 to play and 2 colored mana to activate, but the Masters definitely have powerful abilities. Planeshift filled the hole in the vertical cycle by adding the Battlemages, vanilla creatures with 2 different kickers. The nice thing is you could pay 1 or both kickers if you wanted. Thornscape Battlemage was the most played, coming in with a Shock or a Shatter. Thornscape Battlemage even got the nod as a cycle representative in Time Spiral's time-shifted sheets. The black one could bounce 2 creatures and destroy a land. Not a non-basic land any land is going to do. The blue one could play Dark Banishing, and the white one let you draw a card or kill a flyer. Good stuff. Also, Planar Chaos had a cool callback to the Battlemage cycle, the Anna Battlemage, which had enemy-aligned kickers instead of allied. Shards of Alara does feature a cycle of uncommon Battlemages, but since they have activated abilities, not kicker triggers, I could argue that the Shard Battlemages are improperly named. There are other cycles, I'll save those for next time, but I figure it's only fair to get the most famous card of the set out of the way. The most famous card in the set is Meddling Mage, an invitational card designed by Chris Picula. Chris Picula used to be a commentator for the Magic Pro Tour and is a fantastic storyteller. I met him a few times in Philly, and he's a great guy and a great storyteller even today. I need to tune into some of those streams that Randy Bueller organized, as he's on those. And in an era dominated by control decks, Meddling Mage was a crucial player, able to slip past most counter magic and shut out any number of tricks, or it could stop a combo deck from playing its key piece. Meddling Mage is the first card printed that lets you name a spell and stop it from being cast, and numerous other effects such as Pithing Needle and Nevermore have picked up the Meddling Mage's slack. This isn't in the script, but just a little story about Meddling Mage. So I wasn't there, but Picula was at my local gaming store, Redcap's Corner, this week, playing in the Modern events, and his opponent, Gabe, my good friend of mine, Gabe, amazing tester. Anyway, Gabe was playing a control deck, and he played Meddling Mage on Picula. He realized that, oh no, this Meddling Mage has the Shards of Alara block art. And so he was kind of embarrassed as he played it. And so Picula hit it with the anger of the gods to get rid of this wrong-arted card. So anyway, it was a nice little piece of irony there. Next show, we'll look at the highlight cards and give the set a final review. Thanks for watching, and in the meantime, you can go back and check out my Invasion and Apocalypse shows. They're definitely raw. I had just started making videos, but they do get the essential points right. And you can go and check out my other shows as well. And if you enjoyed this video, please hammer on that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. This is Eli Kaplan for Ancestral Recall, signing off. Good games and good luck.